After having a major medical procedure, the only way to truly understand its impact on your body and mind is to try and do the things that you normally would do in your day-to-day life and then compare your performance after the procedure to how you would have normally done things beforehand. Following my mom's nearly 2-month hospitalization for an autologous stem cell transplant, which was prolonged due to the development of a subdural hematoma that required 2 craniotomies to resolve, she was transferred to a rehabilitation hospital. And the entire ethos of that facility is exactly what I described. It puts individuals who have gone through major treatments into settings with trained therapists, like physical therapists, occupational therapists, and speech therapists, who will lead them through day-to-day activities like eating or walking or speaking in conversation with someone. And then they can truly assess how much impact has had on the body and then help them recover as much functionality as humanly possible. In one of the moments I included for August 31st in my book, Losing Linda May, A Cancer Caregiving Memoir, my mom is working with a speech therapist. And at the beginning of this session that I included, she's doing a mastermind-like game, which is just solving a simple 4-digit number with a very limited amount of numbers that could be selected for each of the spaces. And my mom is really struggling, despite the therapist even giving her a lot of hints and like wink winks and nods when she's doing something right. My mom is just really taking a long time to accomplish something that a first grader could have done pretty easily. Then she has to recite a story that the therapist had told her earlier on in the session, and my mom really mangles it, which further reiterates just how much of a toll that the craniotomies, but then also the chemotherapy that she had had directly administered to her brain and spinal cord had really taken on her. Because she was an incredibly smart individual who had an insane memory, by far one of the best memories I have ever encountered to this day in my life. And I talk about that a little bit in the introduction to the book when I say how she could recall all of the patient histories at the family dental practice practically by memory. Like she wouldn't even have to look at charts. She was incredible. So this performance was so different than who she was prior to all of these treatments, prior to being diagnosed with cancer. But in the context of her entire recovery, the speech therapy was actually deprioritized because she was actually doing quite well, all things considered. She could carry a conversation, she was communicating clearly, and that's why at the end of the session, the speech therapist says that she might graduate from her fairly soon so that she can focus more time and energy on the physical therapy and the occupational therapy. Those were the major issues, because when she was transferred to the rehabilitation hospital, she could not walk on her own, much less stand on her own, which meant that she couldn't use the restroom on her own or take a shower on her own. And then she also really struggled with fine motor skills. So just even using utensils to eat or write was really difficult for her. So those had to be drastically improved in order to make her eligible to be discharged from the hospital, but then also to be at home by herself without, say, a dedicated in-home nurse. Switching gears, I want to talk a little bit about my experience following my autologous stem cell transplant, which was the culmination of all of my treatment for Hodgkin lymphoma. So while I am going to focus specifically on the aftermath of that procedure, it is really the cumulative effect of having gone through several different types of chemotherapy regimens and then culminating with that stem cell transplant. During the period that began with my mom passing away in January 2016 and ended with a pandemic starting in March of 2020, I had really worked on my physical health. I was the most active I had ever been. I was in the gym 6 or 7 days a week. I had bulked up a lot. I had put on so much muscle mass that I had never had before, and I was so much stronger than I had ever been. Cut to the end of my treatment, and I could not have been any weaker. I was even weaker than I was prior to going through that fitness journey. Throughout the course of my treatment, I lost all the mass that I gained, all the strength that I gained. I was actually down 30 pounds. I was skin and bones. I had no energy. I was so easily fatigued. Eventually, when I did start lifting a few weights, I could lift a fraction of what I did prior to having cancer. And even then, I could only last about 20, 30 minutes before just getting completely wiped out. Another day-to-day example of just the toll that had been taken on me is grocery shopping. So when I lived in New York City, I would always make the trek to Trader Joe's to get my groceries for the week. So that meant walking several blocks to the subway, going down the subway steps, going on the subway, then going up the subway steps, walking several more blocks to the Trader Joe's, getting everything, then hauling everything back in the same way. In the aftermath of my cancer treatment, I was living in downtown LA. I didn't have a car, so I did need to walk to the grocery store, which was about a 15-minute trek each way. And so all I could really accommodate with my depleted state was walking there, getting about 2 days worth of supplies and groceries, and then walking back. And that would knock me out. I would have to be on the couch for at least an hour after that. It was just so exhausting. What made that even more complicated is that because I had lost so much weight, I really needed to eat nonstop to try to put it back on. I've always had a really fast metabolism, so it is hard for me to gain weight. So I needed a lot more groceries, but I could not physically hold a lot of groceries at one time. So I was constantly then needing to make more treks to the grocery store, but just incrementally because I couldn't do it in one fell swoop like I could in New York. Reconciling with the full extent of the impact that a treatment has had on you or procedures have had on you can be so dispiriting and discouraging because you realize that you have just such a steep mountain to climb to get back to what is considered normal to you. And I put normal in quotations because it's a flawed concept. Our normal is ever changing as we proceed through life, and especially as we go through these major incidents that are so transformative, both physically and mentally, both positively and negatively. Even if a person is able to recover 100% physically, which is near impossible given the damage that is typically done on the body when you go through really aggressive forms of treatment or procedures, they will always be changed mentally. And they will always have the memories of the state that they were in looming on them through the rest of their life. So that becomes their new normal. Normal is ever shifting in our lives. It's really more what is the ideal state that we are striving towards, not necessarily what is normal to us. But chasing after that ideal state isn't advisable either because it'll just make you continue to feel bad about yourself if you can't get back to that point ever. This is something that I contend with on a daily basis because I have been permanently changed by my treatment. And as I've said previously in these videos, I present as someone who hasn't gone through these treatments, but I have. And there is long-term damage that I will never recover from. Constantly comparing your present self to your past self in whatever ideal state you pick is not advisable. And I do this all the time, so I'm super guilty of this. I am not practicing what I am preaching. I look back on myself prior to having cancer and I see my physical body and I just am in awe of what I used to look like, and I feel like I can never get back to that. I also don't know if I will ever get my strength back or my stamina back because even 3 years out, it's not there for me anymore. And I also have these issues that are permanent now in my life that are come about due to the treatment that I've had. So those aren't going anywhere either. So if you have gone through a major medical crisis and you have changed because of it, because that's inevitable, just give yourself grace and don't focus on the past so much because it won't lead you to a better future. As hard as it is best just to try to maximize the life that you have now, because the big differential is that you have a life to keep living versus individuals like my mom who never even had a chance to grapple with their new condition because they ultimately passed away. I'll be releasing my next video on September 1st, and I will be talking about who I was to my family prior to becoming a primary caregiver for my mom. So hit subscribe, leave any questions in the comments. The link to my book is in the description, and I will see you all tomorrow.